What's the advice that people always give to writers about storytelling? A golden rule that literally everyone knows and brings up whenever critiquing a piece of media that it's like by saying they don't follow it. You've heard it. I've heard it. It's show, don't tell. And I'm here to tell you today why that's horrible advice and shouldn't be listened to. Let me preface my equally inaccurate hyperbolic statement with this. Generally, this advice is actually pretty solid. If you have the option to show something instead of just directly stating it, most of the time you should. Here's a pretty simple example. Which of these pieces of writing do you find more compelling? Austin was kind of sad and couldn't stop thinking about the fact that his dog was dead and he had to bury it in their backyard himself, but he was a super strong stoic man and he therefore did not want to show it. Or, as he leaned the shovel against the wall and stepped out of the storage room, Austin couldn't stop his eyes from drifting back to the mound of freshly turned dirt in the backyard. Try as he might to fight it, his lips kept pulling themselves down at the side. Regardless of the quality you generally rate them at, most people would say that in a 1-to-1 comparison, the second one is better. I would be inclined to agree. It's usually more interesting to be able to see it than just be told the information. So what exactly is my problem? My problem is that this advice is so absolute in its phrasing. There are some things that are completely fine to just state explicitly. Not everything needs to be subtext. Some things can just be text. I don't need to tell any of you that a story is not enhanced by the characters in the main pairing constantly talking about how much they love the other one throughout the entire story. That being said, obviously the fact that they intend to explicitly say I love you at the end doesn't hinder the story at all. In fact, it makes it better. But that's just a small example. What about something that actually drives the plot forward rather than just being a single line at the climax where a bunch of not so explicit things probably already built up to it? Let's say you have a group of high schoolers in math class. They're working on a problem that requires them to know the square root of 5 to 10 decimal places. It's 2.23606797775, one says. Wow, you looked that one up fast, another one remarks. But the first guy is not actually holding a phone or a calculator. Nah, he answers, I just like memorizing strings of numbers. It's fun. That line does two things. First of all, it's an attempt at comedy. Second, it spends more time with a subject which suggests that this is more important than it might seem at first glance. Fast forward to later on in the story. They're out and about and due to a series of unfortunate events get stranded. None of them have their own phones, but luckily they get a stranger to lend them one. Unfortunately, it's 2025 and most people don't remember their own phone numbers, let alone anyone else's, because it's simply not a need anymore. However, the number memorizer remembers all phone numbers of everyone he knows. Therefore, they manage to call someone's parents and have survived this horrible ordeal. Fun payoff to something that could have gone unstated so clearly earlier, but I wouldn't say it's any worse because of that earlier remark. Now, you might be saying, Zoiler, I think you're being pretty bad faith here. Nobody who gives this advice literally believes that you can never say anything directly ever. First of all, don't ever question me again. Second, I agree. Nobody actually thinks that, but that's literally what the advice is saying. I understand that no statement this short can be perfectly nuanced, and it's decent advice to give since most people struggle more with being too direct rather than being way too subtle all the time. Still, it's just not true. It's too simplified. It's not even the best way to explain this concept. A better way that I'd prefer is show and tell, a concept literally anyone who has finished kindergarten would be familiar with. If you want to be a bit more specific without making it too long, you could also say, show more, tell less. Both better alternatives that just aren't that fucking hard to say. But what do you think? Am I completely wrong and stupid, or am I literally the smartest person in the entire world for making this observation? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching. If you like listening to me rant, consider subscribing. Bye!